I'm here with David Cohn. How you doing, Coney? The book, of course, Full Count, The Education of a Pitcher. David Cohn and my good friend Jack Curry as well. And I have to ask you, because Wally and I talk about writing a book. Did you go 50-50 with Jack on this? I mean, does a writer get half on this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Jack earned it on this one.
Yeah?
I believe he did. I mean, I don't return phone calls, so he had to chase me down.
On your own book, he's trying to dig up stories.
Yeah.
Wally, I hope you're listening. It is 50-50 with the writer. First things first, though. Why do this book now?
Yeah, I think, Alan, I've got a different perspective after broadcasting for 10 years, and I wanted to revisit some issues even 30 years ago with my Mets days, and I wanted to have a different twist on it, and I kind of take myself to task there, and I want to show the vulnerable side of pitching and the insecurity. Sometimes the most famous athletes or the best athletes are the most insecure ones, and even in my perfect game, after 8 innings, I'm talking to myself in the mirror in the Yankee Stadium bathroom, trying to talk myself into it. It was good angel, bad angel. So, it's kind of a unique take, I think, on, the mind of a pitcher.
And you say vulnerable, but it also makes you relatable. Because the average person, right, you have your problems, you have your faults. We look at athletes, especially, they get to the level that you got to, the championships, Cy Young and everything, where you guys almost look perfect,
Right.
And you feel like, well, they're not like regular people, but you are, and you show it in this book.
Yeah, exactly. The culture, the change, I wanted to kind of, the common theme throughout the whole book is kind of a culture change. And in the 80s when I was with the Mets, you had to be tough. You couldn't show any weakness. Mm-hmm. You couldn't show any emotion on the mound. If I struck out Mike Schmidt, in a big spot, I had to put my head down and kind of repress my emotions. I couldn't give it a fist pump.
Right.
Nowadays, obviously, the big thing is the bat flips and should pitchers drill hitters if they celebrate too much. And I think authentic emotion is a good thing. I wasted more energy repressing my emotion back in the 80s than was absolutely necessary.
I've always wondered that. Why is it that it's still this unwritten rule in baseball that if I hit a home run, it's put your head down and just run the bases and don't show up the pitcher? But you've seen pitchers strike out a batter and he's fist pumping and he's looking at his dugout and like, what happens there? Can I throw my bat at the pitcher for showing me up when he struck me out? Why is that such a double standard?
Exactly. It's part of that culture, and I think it goes back to the so-called unwritten rules. Respect the game. Mm-hmm. Don't show your opponent up. And certainly there's something in there to be learned, but at the same time, this is raw emotion, and when you do something well and you work so hard to get to the big leagues or any top level in any sport, you should be excited when something good happens, as long as it's not over the top, showboating, in your face, trying to show up your opponent, and where it just becomes almost contrived or theatrical. It's real, raw, authentic emotion is what baseball absolutely needs right now.
I asked Mo Rivera this last week on the show, and I think it's worth asking you as well, because you've experienced winning in New York. And obviously with the Knicks right now and what they're going through, trying to build the franchise up, and they have cap space this summer, trying to attract some big-name free agents. The narrative for so many years when it comes to basketball players coming to New York is it's so tough to win there. It's so tough. There's criticism, that there's so much expectations, and some stars in the past have decided to avoid that. If you had the chance to talk to a big-name free agent, a superstar, who might have that second thoughts about, is it too tough to win and too hard to play in New York, what would you tell them?
You're missing out. This is the best market in the world to play. Any sport. You pick basketball, football, baseball. Everybody says, well, it's so tough to live there. And most people say, well, they just see the concrete of New York City. There's beautiful suburbs if that's what you want. There's great places to raise your kids. You want to hunt? An hour from New York City, there's the most densely wooded areas in the country. Whatever you want, it is here. And everybody says, well, what about the media? Well, the media are some of the best writers in the country, in my mind, and they give you a fair shake if you stand in front of your locker and you're accountable. If you run and hide after you've had a bad game, and then you're the first one to talk when you have a good game, then that's a formula that doesn't work here.
Yeah, that's the phony that we start to see. Right. Did you have to learn that along the way? Because obviously later in your career, you've always been that guy that's been able to relate to all teammates. And obviously now the work you've been doing in broadcasting, terrific on TV, by the way, I'll give you that plug. But did you have to learn that too? Was that something that maybe you were sensitive to criticism at first, but then realized it? Or were you always somebody that understood the role of the media?
Well, there's a great story in the book about this. And, my rookie year with the Mets, or really my first full year, I did a ghostwritten column with Bob Clappish.
Yeah.
And it was before Game 2 of the LCS against the Dodgers, 1988. Big game, my first big game. And all of a sudden, I was critical of Orel Hershiser. I called Orel Hershiser lucky. I said Jay Howe throwing curveballs like a high school pitcher. It was bulletin board material, classic. Tommy Lasorda took it and ran. There was 100 copies of this on their dugout wall. And when I went out to pitch in Game 2, my legs were heavy. I mean, I was so nervous. I completely choked. I spit the bit. I threw the first 8 pitches in the dirt. I got knocked out of the game. It cost us the game. And then after the game, I had a choice. Do I run and hide in the locker room? Do I blame Bob Clappish? I got the byline for that article, but I didn't see it before it went to print. So yeah, I sort of had it out, but I took it. I stood in front of my locker, I took it, and I got the benefit of the doubt from the media from that point on. It was a hard lesson learned in a game that I completely choked and spit the bit. And it's something I wanted to get out. I think that '88 Mets team should have done more. I think I was a big part of why we lost that series, and I cover it in the book.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about it, that you were able to be part of a Mets era where they won a World Series, but then had great expectations in '88, like you said, and then come back to New York a bunch of years later with the Yankees and see how that grows into the dynasty that became as well. You obviously were a different person when you came back to New York. You were no longer the young guy, but the Yankees had a lot of young guys. How were you? Did you handle the younger players the same way you were handled, or was it different with the guys like Jeter and Posada and whatnot?
Yeah, I thought it was different. I was given tough love, and I talk in the book too about, Bobby Oida, the Mets pitcher back then when I was a rookie, just undressing me. I mean, really cutting me down and putting me in my place when I popped off, or when I was a little bit of, wasn't playing the rookie role as you were supposed to play back then. And, I took it and ran with it. I used it as motivation, but I also said, one of these days I'm going to be a veteran. I'm going to do it a little differently. And that's the culture change. That's kind of the theme of the book. And, when Derek Jeter was a rookie in 1996, I said, we need this guy. He's going to be the rookie of the year, for that team. I'm not going to cut him down. I'm not going to just pick him apart and look for any little thing I can find. I'm going to embrace him, try to help him, and talk to him if you see something that needs to be addressed. But we sort of turned it around with a little different culture, a little different approach, and I think that's progress in my mind.
And that's why I think you should be a great manager, because you understand players and you obviously understand the game. There's no question about that.
For more great videos from the MSG 150, check out right there. And remember, our show is on Monday through Thursday, 8 to 10:30 p.m. on MSG Network and MSG Go.